The year was 2147, and Earth had reached its breaking point. For decades, humanity had endured the quiet but constant interference of beings from beyond the stars. At first, it was subtle. Small things like unexplained disappearances in remote areas or strange disruptions in global communications. But over time, the pattern became clearer. Alien forces were meddling in human affairs, stealing resources, and even abducting people for purposes no one fully understood. Governments tried to keep the truth hidden, but whispers spread among the public until there was no denying it anymore. General Alan Hayes stood on the balcony of the United Nations Space Defense Initiative headquarters in Chicago, staring out at the city skyline. He was a tall man with sharp features and graying hair that spoke of years spent carrying heavy burdens. His hands rested on the railing as he thought about the ultimatum he had just delivered to the Galactic Council, an organization made up of representatives from various alien species who claimed to oversee interstellar relations. The message was simple: leave our solar system or face the consequences. It was a bold move, perhaps too bold, but Hayes knew patience had run out. Humanity wasn't going to sit idly by while others treated them like pawns in some cosmic game. Inside the building, Captain Laura Bennett sat at a table, littered with papers and holographic displays. She leaned forward, her elbows resting on the surface as she studied classified reports detailing recent alien activities near Jupiter. Her blonde hair was tied back into a tight bun, and her blue eyes scanned the documents with intense focus. Across from her sat Lieutenant Daniel Ross, a wiry man with dark hair and an easygoing demeanor that masked his sharp mind. They had worked together for years, fighting smaller skirmishes against rogue alien factions, but this situation felt different. "This isn't just another warning," Laura said finally, breaking the silence. Her voice was calm but carried a weight that made Daniel look up from the files he was reviewing. "They're stockpiling weapons out there, big ones." Daniel nodded slowly, his brow furrowing as he flipped through images of sleek insectoid ships orbiting one of Jupiter's moons. The designs were unlike anything humans had ever created, smooth, angular, and eerily efficient. "If they're willing to escalate like this, then we need to be ready for war," he replied, though the words sounded hollow even to him. War with an advanced alien civilization? It seemed impossible to win. Meanwhile, halfway across the world, Dr. Emily Carter was hard at work in the Lunar Research Facility. A brilliant xenobiologist, Emily had dedicated her life to studying extraterrestrial life forms. Her lab was cluttered with equipment, samples, and notes scrawled on walls and whiteboards. Today, however, her attention was fixed on something unusual, a set of samples brought back from a recent asteroid mining mission. As she examined the material under a microscope, her heart began to race. The substance didn't match any known terrestrial biology. In fact, it didn't seem natural at all. Its structure was intricate, almost mechanical, yet undeniably organic. What really caught her attention, though, was the sequence embedded within its DNA-like strands. It looked like instructions. A countdown, maybe? Emily's hands trembled slightly as she adjusted the magnification, trying to make sense of what she was seeing. Whatever this was, it wasn't meant to exist naturally. Someone, or something, had designed it. Back in Chicago, Laura and Daniel continued their preparations. The UNSDI had assembled a team to investigate the alien presence near Jupiter, and Laura had been chosen to lead the mission. She trusted Daniel implicitly, but the stakes here were higher than anything they'd faced before. This wasn't about defending a colony or rescuing hostages. This was about survival. If the aliens truly intended to invade, humanity would need every advantage it could get. As the hours passed, Emily's discovery grew more alarming. After running countless simulations, she realized the implications of the biological code. It wasn't just a weapon. It was a doomsday device. Designed to rewrite ecosystems at a genetic level, it could render Earth uninhabitable within weeks, if activated. Panic bubbled inside her chest as she considered the possibilities. Was this why the aliens were stockpiling weapons? Were they planning to wipe out humanity entirely? She immediately contacted General Hayes, sending him a detailed report along with her findings. Within minutes, she received a response summoning her to Chicago. Emily packed her notes and boarded the next shuttle to Earth, her mind racing with questions. Could humanity possibly stand against such a threat? And if they couldn't, what hope did they have left? When Emily arrived at the UNSDI headquarters, she was ushered into a meeting room where Laura, Daniel, and several other high-ranking officials waited. The air was tense, thick with the weight of what they were about to discuss. Emily took a deep breath and began explaining her discovery, laying out the evidence piece by piece. By the time she finished, the room was silent except for the faint hum of the holographic display hovering above the table. Laura broke the silence first. So, you're saying this thing could destroy us completely? Her tone was steady, but her knuckles whitened as she gripped the edge of the table. Emily nodded grimly. Yes, and based on the data I've analyzed, it's already been deployed somewhere in the solar system. We just don't know where yet. Daniel let out a low whistle. That's not good. General Hayes stepped forward, his expression unreadable. Then we'll find it, he said firmly, and we'll stop it, no matter what it takes. Over the next few days, plans were drawn up and teams assembled. Laura and Daniel would lead a covert operation to infiltrate a derelict alien vessel, drifting near Saturn. Intelligence suggested it might contain valuable information, or worse, part of the bioweapon itself. Meanwhile, Emily would remain on Earth, working tirelessly to decode more of the biological instructions in hopes of finding a way to counteract them. As the mission date approached, tensions ran high. Laura spent long hours poring over maps and schematics, memorizing every detail of the alien ship's layout. Daniel double-checked their gear, ensuring everything was in perfect working order. Neither of them spoke much during those final preparations, each lost in their own thoughts. Finally, the day came. Standing on the launch pad beneath the shadow of the starship Eclipse, Laura turned to Daniel. "Ready for this?" she asked, forcing a smile despite the knot of anxiety twisting in her stomach. "As ready as I'll ever be," he replied, adjusting the strap of his rifle. With a final nod, they climbed aboard the ship, joined by a small crew including pilot Jake Miller and engineer Samantha Brooks. As the engines roared to life and the Eclipse lifted off, Laura glanced out the viewport at the shrinking image of Earth below. For better or worse, humanity's future now rested in their hands. The journey to Saturn was long and quiet, giving everyone plenty of time to think. Laura rehearsed strategies in her head, running through every possible scenario. Daniel tinkered with his equipment, making last-minute adjustments. Jake kept the ship steady, navigating carefully to avoid detection, while Samantha monitored the systems, ensuring nothing went wrong. When they finally reached the alien vessel, the sight was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. The ship loomed large against the blackness of space, its surface covered in strange, pulsating lights. Cloaked in stealth technology, the Eclipse docked silently, and the team prepared to enter the unknown. Laura led the way, her pulse pounding in her ears as she stepped onto the alien ship. The air inside was cold and stale, filled with an eerie silence that sent shivers down her spine. The corridors twisted and turned like a maze, lined with walls that seemed to shift and shimmer under the dim lighting. Every step felt heavier than the last, as if the ship itself was alive and watching them. It didn't take long for them to find evidence of atrocities. Rooms filled with grotesque experiments, half-human, half-alien hybrids suspended in tanks of green liquid. Laura clenched her fists, anger boiling inside her. These weren't just invaders, they were monsters. But there was no time to dwell on the horrors around them. Their mission was clear: retrieve whatever intelligence they could and get out alive. As they moved deeper into the ship, they discovered a central chamber containing a massive, pulsating core. Emily's warnings echoed in Laura's mind as she stared at the glowing mass. This was it, the source of the bioweapon. "Let's grab what we can and go," Daniel whispered urgently, scanning the room for threats. Laura nodded, signaling for the team to begin downloading data from the core. But as they worked, alarms blared throughout the ship and the lights flickered violently. They weren't alone anymore. The battle that followed was chaotic and brutal. Laura and Daniel fought side by side, taking down wave after wave of alien defenders. Bullets ricocheted off metallic surfaces and the smell of burnt metal filled the air. Despite the odds, they held their ground, determined to complete the mission. Finally, with the data secured and the countermeasure uploaded, they made a desperate retreat back to the Eclipse. As the ship pulled away, the alien vessel exploded in a blinding flash of light, leaving behind only debris and unanswered questions. Breathing heavily, Laura sank into her seat, her body aching from the fight, but her spirit unbroken. They had done it. They had struck back against their oppressors. But deep down she knew this was only the beginning. The explosion of the alien vessel lit up the darkness of space like a second sun. From the safety of the Eclipse, Laura and her team watched as the debris scattered across the void, a silent testament to their daring mission. For a moment, there was relief. A fleeting sense that they had struck a meaningful blow against their oppressors. But it didn't last long. The reality of what they had uncovered weighed heavily on everyone's minds. Back on Earth, General Alan Hayes stood in front of a large screen displaying live footage from Saturn. His expression was unreadable, though his clenched jaw betrayed the tension he felt. "Good work, Captain," he said into the communicator, addressing Laura aboard the Eclipse. "But this is far from over." Laura nodded, even though she knew Hayes couldn't see her. "Understood, sir," she replied, her voice steady despite the exhaustion creeping into her bones. She glanced at Daniel, who was sitting nearby, staring out the viewport at the remnants of the alien ship. His face was pale, and his hands trembled slightly as he gripped the edge of his seat. They had both seen things inside that vessel that would haunt them for the rest of their lives. As the Eclipse began its journey back to Earth, Emily Carter received the data retrieved by Laura's team. Working tirelessly in her lab at the Lunar Research Facility, she pored over the information, searching for clues about the bioweapon's design and purpose. The more she learned, the clearer it became. This wasn't just a weapon meant to destroy ecosystems. It was a tool designed to rewrite life itself. Whoever controlled it could reshape entire planets, turning them into something unrecognizable. Emily's heart raced as she analyzed the biological code embedded within the weapon. It was sophisticated, almost poetic in its complexity, but also horrifying. She realized that the aliens weren't just invaders, they were conquerors. Their goal wasn't simply to take resources or territory. It was to remake Earth in their own image, erasing humanity in the process. Her findings were sent directly to General Hayes, who called an emergency meeting with top military officials and scientists. In a dimly lit conference room, Emily presented her conclusions using holographic projections to illustrate how the bioweapon worked. The room fell silent as she explained the potential consequences of activation. If the weapon reached Earth, it would spread rapidly, altering every living organism it touched. Plants, animals, humans, all would be transformed into something alien and hostile. "We have maybe weeks before it's fully operational," Emily concluded, her voice trembling despite her best efforts to stay composed. "If we don't act, now it'll be too late." General Hayes leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "What are our options?" he asked, his tone grave. Emily hesitated, glancing down at her notes. "We can try to destroy it," she said finally, "but given its design, that might not be enough. Even if we disable one part of the system, the rest could still function. Alternatively," she paused, choosing her words carefully, "we could adapt it, use their own technology against them." The room erupted into murmurs of disbelief. Adapting alien tech? It sounded impossible or reckless. But Hayes held up a hand, silencing the others. "Explain," he said simply. Taking a deep breath, Emily continued. "If we reverse engineer the bioweapon, we might be able to create a countermeasure, something that neutralizes its effects or, better yet, turns it back on them." She looked around the room, meeting the skeptical eyes of the assembled officers. "It's risky, I know, but if we succeed, we'd have a way to fight back, not just survive, but win." Hayes considered this for a long moment before nodding, slowly. "Do it," he said, "but you'll need help. Assemble a team and get to work immediately. With the decision made, Emily returned to her lab, where she began assembling a small group of trusted colleagues. Among them was Dr. Ryan Keller, a geneticist known for his groundbreaking work on human augmentation. Together, they dove headfirst into the task of deciphering the alien code, working around the clock to unlock its secrets. Meanwhile, tensions between humanity and the alien forces escalated rapidly. News of the destroyed vessel near Saturn spread quickly, and the Galactic Council responded with fury. An alien envoy named Zixor broadcasted a chilling message directly into every communication network on Earth. The transmission appeared without warning, interrupting broadcasts worldwide. On screens large and small, Zixor's elongated insectoid form filled the frame, its multifaceted eyes glinting menacingly. "You are children playing with fire," Zixor declared, its voice cold and mechanical. "Cease your provocations or suffer annihilation." The message sent shockwaves through the population. Some people panicked, while others rallied behind calls for resistance. President Rachel Monroe addressed the planet in a historic speech, standing before a podium adorned with the flag of the United Nations. Her presence was calm but resolute as she spoke to billions of viewers. "For too long we've allowed fear to dictate our actions," she said, her voice firm. "No longer will we cower before those who see us as weak. We are done playing nice." Her words ignited a spark of defiance across the globe. Protests turned into rallies, and citizens demanded action. Military enlistments surged overnight as ordinary men and women volunteered to defend their planet. Humanity, once fractured and divided, found unity in the face of a common enemy. In Chicago, Laura and Daniel prepared for the next phase of the conflict. With the alien threat growing bolder, the UNSDI shifted its focus from defense to offense. Plans were drawn up for a full-scale assault on the alien stronghold near Jupiter, where intelligence suggested the main source of the bioweapon was located. However, General Hayes remained cautious, knowing such a move could provoke all-out war. Instead, he authorized a surgical strike led by Laura and her team. Their mission: infiltrate the alien base, locate the bioweapon, and deploy Emily's countermeasure. It was a dangerous plan, fraught with risks, but Hayes believed it was their best chance of stopping the weapon before it was too late. As preparations got underway, Emily approached Laura with a bold proposal. "Take me with you," she said, her eyes blazing with determination. "I understand the technology better than anyone. If something goes wrong, I'll be the only one who can fix it." Laura hesitated. Bringing a civilian into combat was unprecedented and potentially disastrous, but she couldn't deny the logic behind Emily's request. Reluctantly, she agreed, adding Emily to the roster for the mission. The team gathered aboard the Eclipse once again, joined this time by Emily, Jake, and Samantha. Each member brought unique skills to the table, forming a tight-knit unit united by a shared purpose. As the ship launched into orbit, Laura addressed the group, her voice cutting through the hum of the engines. "This isn't just another mission," she said, looking each person in the eye. "This is everything. If we fail, Earth doesn't stand a chance, so let's make sure we don't fail." The journey to Jupiter was tense and quiet. Everyone knew the odds were stacked against them, but no one voiced their fears aloud. Instead, they focused on the task ahead, running simulations and reviewing plans until they knew them by heart. Emily spent hours refining the countermeasure, ensuring it would work under any circumstances. Daniel checked and rechecked their weapons while Jake ran diagnostics on the ship's systems. Samantha tinkered with the cloaking device, determined to keep them hidden from enemy sensors. When they arrived at the alien base, the sight was overwhelming. A massive structure floated in the shadow of one of Jupiter's moons, its surface bristling with weapons and defenses, cloaked in stealth technology. The Eclipse slipped past the outer perimeter undetected, docking at a secondary entrance far from the main hub. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of chemicals and the faint hum of machinery. The corridors, twisted and turned like veins in a living organism, pulsating with eerie light. Laura led the way, her weapon raised as she scanned for threats. Behind her, Emily clutched a handheld scanner, her eyes darting between the device and their surroundings. They moved cautiously, avoiding patrols of insectoid soldiers and hacking security systems to gain access to restricted areas. Finally, they reached the heart of the facility, a cavernous chamber dominated by a massive, pulsating core. It was larger than anything they had encountered before, radiating energy that made the air crackle with static. "This is it," Emily whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the core. She connected her tablet to a nearby terminal, uploading the countermeasure program. The process was agonizingly slow, and Laura and Daniel took up defensive positions, ready to fend off any attackers. Minutes stretched into eternity as the upload progressed. Then, without warning, alarms blared throughout the facility and the lights flickered violently. They had been discovered. Alien soldiers swarmed into the chamber, their weapons firing bursts of energy that ricocheted off walls and equipment. Laura and Daniel fought back fiercely, taking down wave after wave of enemies. Emily worked frantically, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she tried to finish the upload. "Almost there," she shouted, sweat dripping down her face. Jake and Samantha joined the fray, providing cover fire as the battle raged on. Bullets whizzed past and explosions rocked the chamber, but Laura refused to give up. She fought with everything she had, driven by the knowledge that failure wasn't an option. Finally, the upload completed and the core B. The journey back to Earth was quieter than anyone expected. The adrenaline that had fueled the team during their mission near Jupiter began to fade, leaving behind a heavy exhaustion. Laura sat in the cockpit of the Eclipse, staring out at the endless expanse of stars. Her mind replayed the events of the past few days, the alien base, the pulsating core, the desperate escape. She couldn't shake the feeling that they had only delayed the inevitable. Behind her, Emily worked tirelessly on her tablet, analyzing the data they had retrieved from the alien stronghold. Her hands moved quickly across the screen, her eyes darting between lines of code and diagrams. Despite the fatigue etched into her face, she refused to rest. "We got lucky," she muttered to herself, though her voice carried just enough for Laura to hear. "Lucky?" Laura asked, turning slightly in her seat. "Is that what you call it?" Emily looked up, meeting Laura's gaze. "Yes," she said firmly. "If we hadn't stopped that core when we did, it would have been too late. But this isn't over. They'll come back stronger next time." Laura nodded slowly. She knew Emily was right. The aliens weren't the kind to give up easily. Destroying one base might slow them down, but it wouldn't stop them. Humanity needed more than luck. It needed a way to fight back. As the Eclipse approached Earth, the crew prepared for debriefings with General Hayes and his team. When they landed at the UNSDI headquarters in Chicago, they were greeted by a flurry of activity. Military personnel rushed around carrying reports and equipment. The atmosphere was tense, charged with urgency. It was clear that news of their success and the looming alien threat had spread quickly. General Hayes wasted no time. He called an emergency briefing, gathering Laura, Emily, Daniel, Jake, and Samantha in a secure conference room. The walls were lined with screens displaying maps, schematics, and live feeds from satellites monitoring alien movements. Hayes stood at the head of the table, his expression grim. "The aliens are mobilizing," he said without preamble. "Our intel suggests they're preparing for a full-scale invasion. We've bought ourselves some time, but not much." Laura felt a chill run down her spine. "How long do we have?" "Days, maybe weeks," Hayes replied. "But there's something else." He gestured to one of the screens, which displayed footage of alien ships amassing near the edge of the solar system. "They're bringing reinforcements, more ships, more soldiers. If we don't act now, we won't stand a chance." Emily leaned forward, her eyes narrowing as she studied the footage. "There's more to it than just numbers," she said. "Their technology is far ahead of ours. Even if we manage to hold them off temporarily, they'll adapt. They'll find new ways to attack us." Hayes nodded. "That's why we need to change the game. Dr. Carter, you mentioned adapting their tech before. What's your progress?" Emily hesitated, glancing at the others before speaking. I've been working on a countermeasure based on the bioweapons design. It's risky, but if we can deploy it correctly, it could turn the tide in our favor. What exactly does it do? Daniel asked, his brow furrowing. It uses their own biology against them, Emily explained. The bioweapon was designed to rewrite ecosystems. My countermeasure reverses that process, targeting their genetic structure instead of ours. In theory, it could neutralize their forces or at least weaken them significantly. Hayes crossed his arms, considering her words. Do you think it's ready? Emily shook her head. Not yet. I need more time to refine it. But even then, deploying it won't be easy. We'd need to get close to their main fleet, and that's suicide. We'll figure it out, Laura interjected, her voice firm. If this is our best shot, we'll take it. Hayes gave her a long look before nodding. All right. You have 24 hours to finalize the countermeasure. After that, we move. Over the next day, Emily worked non-stop, barely pausing to eat or sleep. Laura and Daniel helped where they could, running simulations and testing scenarios. Jake and Samantha focused on upgrading the Eclipse, reinforcing its shields and weapons in preparation for the coming battle. The entire team was driven by a shared determination to protect Earth, no matter the cost. Meanwhile, the aliens made their intentions clear. A second transmission from Zixor aired worldwide, this time accompanied by images of devastated alien worlds. This is what happens to those who defy us, Zixor declared, its voice cold and unyielding. Surrender now, or suffer the same fate. The message sent shockwaves through the population. Some people panicked, fleeing cities and stockpiling supplies. Others rallied behind calls for resistance, joining military efforts or volunteering for civil defense programs. President Rachel Monroe addressed the nation once again, urging calm and unity. We will not bow to fear, she said. We will stand together and fight for our future. Her words inspired millions, but they also highlighted the stakes. This wasn't just a war. It was a fight for survival. Humanity's existence hung in the balance. By the time Emily completed the countermeasure, the alien fleet had entered the solar system. Ships descended toward Earth, their sleek forms casting shadows over cities as they passed overhead. Panic erupted in the streets, but the UNSDI remained focused. General Hayes issued orders, mobilizing every available resource to defend the planet. The plan was simple yet dangerous. Laura and her team would fly the Eclipse directly into the heart of the alien fleet, deploying the countermeasure at close range. It was a suicide mission, but they all knew it was necessary. If they succeeded, they could cripple the alien forces and buy humanity time to regroup. If they failed, well, failure wasn't an option. Before heading out, Laura gathered the team for a final briefing. This is it, she said, her voice steady despite the weight of what lay ahead. Once we launch, there's no turning back. Stick to the plan, watch each other's backs, and remember why we're doing this. For Earth. One by one, the others nodded. Emily stepped forward, holding out a small device containing the countermeasure. Make sure this gets to their flagship, she said. It has to be deployed at the source. Laura took the device, securing it to her belt. Understood. As they boarded the Eclipse, the tension was palpable. Jake powered up the engines while Samantha ran a final systems check. Daniel loaded his weapon, his hands steady despite the fear in his eyes. Emily stayed behind, watching as the ship lifted off, her heart pounding with hope and dread. The journey to the alien fleet was harrowing. Enemy ships swarmed around them, firing energy blasts that lit up the darkness of space. Jake maneuvered the Eclipse with precision, dodging attacks and weaving through the chaos. Samantha monitored the shields, calling out warnings whenever they took a hit. They're onto us, Daniel shouted, pointing at a group of alien fighters closing in fast. Hold them off, Laura ordered, gripping the controls tightly. We're almost there. The team fought fiercely, taking down enemy ships and fending off boarding parties. Bullets ricocheted off metal surfaces, and explosions rocked the ship, but they pressed on. Finally, they reached the flagship, a massive vessel bristling with weapons and defenses. This is it, Laura said, her voice cutting through the noise. Prepare for deployment. Emily's countermeasure was activated as they breached the flagship's hull. The device emitted a low hum, spreading waves of energy that disrupted the alien systems. Alarms blared throughout the ship, and the lights flickered violently. Alien soldiers scrambled to respond, but it was too late. The countermeasure was already taking effect. "We did it," Daniel exclaimed, a grin spreading across his face. But their victory was short-lived. As they tried to retreat, the flagship's core began destabilizing. Warning klaxons blared, and the ground shook beneath their feet. "Let's go," Laura yelled, leading the charge back to the Eclipse. The escape was chaotic, with debris raining down and explosions lighting up the interior of the flagship. Jake piloted the Eclipse skillfully, navigating through the collapsing structure. Just as they cleared the hull, the flagship exploded in a blinding flash of light, sending shockwaves rippling through space. Breathing heavily, Laura slumped into her seat as the Eclipse sped away from the wreckage. Behind them, the alien fleet faltered, their ships crippled by the effects of the countermeasure. For the first time in weeks, hope flickered in the hearts of humanity. But as they approached Earth, Laura couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The aliens had been weakened, but they weren't defeated. And somewhere out there, Zixor was still watching, waiting for its next move. The Eclipse descended through Earth's atmosphere, its hull glowing red-hot as it pierced the sky. Inside, the team sat in silence, their bodies battered and bruised, but alive. Laura stared out the viewport at the planet below, her heart heavy, with both relief and dread. The countermeasure had worked. It had crippled the alien fleet and bought humanity precious time. But she knew it wasn't enough. This victory felt fragile, like a crack in a dam holding back an ocean of trouble. As they landed at the UNSDI headquarters in Chicago, a crowd of military personnel and scientists greeted them. Cheers erupted when the hatch opened and Laura stepped out, followed by Daniel, Jake, and Samantha. Despite the celebration, Laura's expression remained grim. She scanned the faces around her, searching for General Alan Hayes. When she spotted him standing near the edge of the crowd, his arms crossed and his face unreadable, she walked straight toward him. "Mission accomplished," she said simply, handing him a data chip containing everything they had gathered during their assault on the alien flagship. Hayes took the chip without a word, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Good work," he replied, though his tone lacked enthusiasm. "But don't celebrate just yet, we've got bigger problems," Laura frowned. "What do you mean?" Hayes gestured for her to follow him into a nearby command center. The room was bustling with activity. Officers shouting orders, technicians monitoring screens, and analysts poring over maps and reports. On one of the main displays, a live feed showed the remnants of the alien fleet retreating beyond the orbit of Mars. But something else caught Laura's attention. Red markers scattered across the globe, each representing areas where strange phenomena had been reported. "What are those?" Laura asked, pointing at the markers. "Reports started coming in shortly after your countermeasure went off," Hayes explained. "Strange weather patterns, unexplained seismic activity, even sightings of creatures." He hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "It seems the bioweapon isn't completely neutralized. Fragments of it are still active, spreading across the planet." Laura's stomach sank. "You're saying it mutated?" "Not exactly," Hayes said. "More like adapted. Your countermeasure disrupted its original programming, but parts of it survived. Now it's behaving unpredictably, rewriting ecosystems in ways we can't fully understand." Emily Carter rushed into the room, her face pale and her hair disheveled. She had been analyzing the effects of the countermeasure since the team returned, and what she had discovered terrified her. "It's worse than we thought," she said, holding up a tablet displaying images of twisted plants, deformed animals, and bizarre humanoid figures. "The bioweapon is evolving. It's not just targeting specific species anymore. It's reshaping entire environments." Hayes turned to Emily, his voice sharp. "Can you fix it?" Emily shook her head. "I don't know. Maybe, but I need more time and resources. This thing is spreading faster than I can keep up with." Laura clenched, her fists, frustration bubbling inside her. So what do we do, just wait for it to consume us? No, Hayes said firmly. We fight back. You've proven that humanity can adapt, that we can use their own tools against them. Now it's time to take the next step. Over the next few days, the UNSDI launched a global effort to combat the growing threat. Military units were deployed to affected areas, tasked with containing outbreaks and protecting civilians. Scientists worked around the clock to develop new countermeasures, while engineers designed advanced weapons capable of combating the mutated organisms. At the center of it all was Emily, who barely left her lab as she raced to find a solution. Laura and her team weren't idle either. They were assigned to lead expeditions into infected zones, gathering samples and studying the effects of the bioweapon firsthand. Each mission was dangerous, pushing them to their limits. The creatures they encountered were unlike anything they had ever seen, grotesque hybrids of plant, animal, and alien biology. Some were aggressive, attacking on sight, while others seemed almost sentient, watching silently from the shadows. During one such mission, Laura and Daniel ventured deep into a forest that had been transformed overnight. Trees grew twisted and blackened, their branches ending in razor-sharp points. Strange vines slithered across the ground like snakes, seeking prey. As they moved cautiously through the undergrowth, Daniel froze, pointing at something ahead. "Do you see that?" he whispered. Laura squinted, her hand tightening on her rifle. Through the dense foliage, she could make out a figure, a humanoid shape covered in pulsating growths. Its limbs were elongated, and its head tilted unnaturally to one side, as if studying them. For a moment, neither of them moved, locked in a silent standoff. Then, without warning, the creature lunged. Laura fired instinctively, her bullets tearing through its body, but it kept coming, unfazed. Daniel joined in, his weapon spitting bursts of energy that finally brought the creature down. It collapsed in a heap, twitching violently before going still. Breathing heavily, Laura approached the corpse, her boot crunching on the brittle leaves beneath her feet. She knelt down, examining the creature's grotesque form. Its skin was translucent, revealing organs that glowed faintly beneath the surface. Tubes and tendrils connected its body to the surrounding vegetation as if it were part of the ecosystem itself. "This isn't natural," Laura muttered, shaking her head. "It's like it's alive, but also not." Daniel nodded, his expression grim. "Whatever this thing is, it's not alone. Look." He pointed deeper into the forest where dozens of glowing eyes peered out from the darkness. More creatures were watching them, waiting. "We need to get out of here," Laura said, rising to her feet. "Now." They retreated quickly, firing blindly into the shadows as the creatures gave chase. By the time they reached the extraction point, their nerves were frayed and their ammunition nearly depleted. Back aboard the Eclipse, they relayed their findings to Emily, who listened intently, her face growing paler with every detail. "This changes everything," she said finally. "If these things are connected to the environment, then we can't just kill them. We have to sever the link, the bond between them and the bioweapon." "How do we do that?" Laura asked. "I'm working on it," Emily replied. "But I need access to the source, the original core. If any fragments of it are still out there, they're fueling this mutation." The hunt for the remaining cores became the top priority. Intelligence suggested that several smaller installations existed throughout the solar system, hidden away by the aliens as backups. General Hayes authorized a series of high-risk missions to locate and destroy these sites, knowing full well that failure could spell disaster. For Laura and her team, the missions were grueling. They traveled from asteroid bases to derelict moons, battling alien forces and navigating treacherous terrain. Each site they found was more heavily guarded than the last, forcing them to rely on stealth and strategy to succeed. Along the way, they uncovered disturbing evidence of further experimentation: hybrid creatures locked in containment cells, genetic blueprints detailing plans for even deadlier weapons. Despite the danger, Laura refused to give up. Every victory, no matter how small, fueled her determination. She began to see herself not just as a soldier, but as a protector of humanity's future. And she wasn't alone. Her team shared her resolve, their bond strengthening with every challenge they faced. One night, as they rested aboard the Eclipse between missions, Laura sat with Daniel in the ship's mess hall. The lights were dim, casting long shadows across the walls. Neither of them spoke for a while, lost in their thoughts. "You ever think about what happens after all this?" Daniel asked suddenly, breaking the silence. Laura glanced at him, surprised by the question. "After?" "Yeah," he said, shrugging. "If we win, if we actually beat them, what then? Do we go back to normal, or has everything changed too much?" Laura sighed, leaning back in her chair. "I don't know," she admitted. "Maybe there is no normal anymore. But if we can stop them, if we can protect Earth, then maybe that's enough." Daniel nodded slowly, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Yeah, maybe." Their conversation was interrupted by a call from Samantha, who was monitoring the ship's sensors. "We've got movement," she said urgently. "Something big. Looks like another alien vessel." Laura and Daniel exchanged a glance before jumping to their feet. Whatever rest they had planned would have to wait. There was no time to waste, not when the fate of humanity hung in the balance. As the Eclipse approached the alien ship, Laura couldn't help but feel a sense of déjà vu. Once again, they were heading into the unknown, armed with little more than courage and determination. But this time, something was different. This time, she knew they weren't fighting just to survive. They were fighting to reclaim their place in the universe. And for the first time in a long time, Laura allowed herself to hope. Not because she believed it would be easy, but because she knew they had no other choice. The alien vessel loomed ahead, its sleek insectoid design casting an ominous shadow over the Eclipse. Laura stood in the cockpit, her hands gripping the controls tightly as Jake maneuvered the ship closer. The tension in the air was palpable, each member of the team acutely aware of what was at stake. This wasn't just another mission, it felt like the final stand. "We're within range," Jake announced, his voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "Shields are up, weapons online." "Good," Laura replied, glancing over her shoulder at Daniel, who was checking his rifle one last time. "Let's make this count." Samantha monitored the sensors from her station, her fingers flying across the console. "I'm picking up multiple signatures inside," she said. "Looks like they're expecting us." "They always do," Daniel muttered under his breath, earning a grim nod from Laura. Emily sat quietly in the corner, clutching a tablet filled with data about the bioweapon fragments. Her face was pale but determined. She knew the stakes better than anyone. If they failed to destroy this vessel and the core it contained, the mutated organisms spreading across Earth would only grow stronger. Humanity's survival depended on their success. As the Eclipse docked with the alien ship, the team prepared for what lay ahead. Laura led the way, her weapon raised as they stepped onto the alien vessel. The interior was eerily familiar. Twisting, corridors lit by pulsating lights, walls that seemed to shift and shimmer under their touch. But there was something different this time. The air was thick with a strange hum, almost like the ship itself was alive and watching them. "This place gives me the creeps," Jake whispered, his voice barely audible over the ambient noise. "You're not alone," Samantha replied, scanning the area with a handheld device. "Keep your eyes open. Something feels off." They moved cautiously, avoiding patrols of insectoid soldiers and disabling security systems as they went. Each step brought them closer to their goal, the central chamber where the alien core was housed. Along the way, they encountered more evidence of the aliens' experiments. Rooms filled with grotesque hybrids suspended in tanks, walls lined with organic circuitry that pulsed rhythmically. It was a nightmare made real, a glimpse into the twisted mind of their enemy. Finally, they reached the heart of the vessel, a cavernous room dominated by a massive glowing core. Its surface rippled like liquid metal, radiating energy that made the air crackle with static. Emily approached it cautiously, her tablet already scanning for vulnerabilities. "This is it," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "If we can disable this, we might be able to stop the mutations altogether. How long will it take? Laura asked, keeping watch for any signs of danger. Too long, Emily admitted. We'll need to hold them off while I work. Laura nodded, signaling for the others to take defensive positions. Daniel and Jake set up near the entrance, their weapons trained on the corridor outside. Samantha stayed close to Emily, ready to assist if needed. Laura positioned herself between the group and the core, her rifle aimed at the shadows beyond. Minutes stretched into eternity as Emily worked frantically, her fingers flying across the keyboard. Alarms blared suddenly, shattering the tense silence. The lights flickered violently and the hum grew louder, almost deafening. "They know we're here," Daniel shouted, firing a burst of energy as alien soldiers swarmed into the chamber. The battle erupted in chaos. Laura fought with everything she had, taking down wave after wave of enemies. Bullets ricocheted off metallic surfaces, and explosions rocked the chamber, but she refused to give up. Beside her, Daniel and Jake held their ground, their teamwork seamless despite the overwhelming odds. Samantha kept Emily shielded, using makeshift barriers to block incoming fire. "We're almost done," Emily yelled, her voice cutting through the noise. "Just a little longer." Laura gritted her teeth, her body aching from the strain. She couldn't afford to falter, not now, not when they were so close. With a final surge of determination, she pushed forward, clearing a path for Emily to finish her work. Finally, the core began destabilizing. Warning klaxons blared as the ground shook beneath their feet. "It's done!" Emily exclaimed, grabbing her tablet and backing away from the core. "Let's get out of here." The team sprinted toward the exit, dodging falling debris and enemy fire. Just as they reached the eclipse, the core exploded in a blinding flash of light, obliterating the alien vessel and everything around it. Jake piloted the ship away from the destruction, his hands steady on the controls despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. Breathing heavily, Laura collapsed into her seat as the eclipse sped back toward Earth. Behind them, the remains of the alien ship drifted apart, consumed by flames and debris. For the first time in days, the weight on Laura's shoulders lifted slightly. They had done it. They had destroyed another core. But as they approached Earth, Laura couldn't shake the feeling that this victory was only temporary. The aliens wouldn't give up so easily. This was just the beginning of a much larger fight. Back on Earth, the effects of their actions began to show. Reports poured in from affected areas, detailing a slowdown in the spread of the mutated organisms. Plants and animals that had been transformed by the bioweapon started reverting to their original forms, though the process was slow and uneven. Scientists worked tirelessly to accelerate the reversal, using data provided by Emily to develop treatments and countermeasures. General Hayes called another briefing, gathering Laura, Emily, and the rest of the team in the command center. The mood was cautiously optimistic, though Hayes remained vigilant. "We've made progress," he said, addressing the group. "But the aliens aren't defeated yet. Intelligence suggests they're regrouping, preparing for a second wave." "What does that mean for us?" Laura asked, her voice firm despite the exhaustion etched into her face. "It means we need to be ready," Hayes replied. "And not just to defend ourselves, we need to strike back, to show them that humanity isn't afraid to fight." Emily stepped forward, her expression resolute. "There's something else," she said. "While analyzing the cores we've destroyed, I found traces of a new program embedded within the bioweapon. It's incomplete, but if activated, it could create something far worse than what we've seen so far." "What are you saying?" Daniel asked, his brow furrowing. "I'm saying we might have stopped the mutations for now, but the aliens are planning something bigger," Emily explained. "Something designed to wipe us out completely." Hayes crossed his arms, considering her words. "Then we stop them before they can finish it. Dr. Carter, you'll continue working on deciphering the program. Captain Bennett, your team will lead reconnaissance missions to locate and neutralize any remaining threats." Laura nodded, her resolve hardening. "Understood." Over the next few weeks, the UNSDI launched a series of coordinated operations, targeting known alien strongholds. Laura and her team became legends among the ranks, their bravery inspiring others to join the fight. Civilians rallied behind them, volunteering for civil defense programs and supporting military efforts in any way they could. President Rachel Monroe addressed the nation once again, her presence calm but resolute. Humanity has faced countless challenges throughout history, and we have always risen to meet them, she declared. Today is no different. Together we will stand against those who seek to destroy us. Together, we will prevail. Her words ignited a spark of defiance across the globe. Protests turned into rallies and citizens demanded action. Military enlistment surged overnight as ordinary men and women volunteered to defend their planet. Humanity, once fractured and divided, found unity in the face of a common enemy. Meanwhile, Emily made a groundbreaking discovery. While studying the remnants of the alien cores, she uncovered a hidden code, a failsafe mechanism embedded within the bioweapons design. If activated, it could shut down the entire system, rendering the weapon useless. But activating it required access to the aliens' main command center, a heavily fortified installation located deep within their territory. This could end it, Emily said, presenting her findings to General Hayes. But getting to the command center won't be easy. It's guarded by their strongest forces. Hayes nodded, his expression grim. Then we'll find a way. Captain Bennett, assemble your team. You leave at dawn. The night before the mission, Laura gathered her team in the mess hall. The room was quiet, the weight of what lay ahead hanging over them like a storm cloud. Laura looked at each of them, Daniel, Jake, Samantha, and Emily, and felt a surge of pride. They had come so far together, faced unimaginable dangers, and emerged stronger because of it. This is it, she said finally, breaking the silence. Tomorrow we go after the command center. If we succeed, we can stop the aliens once and for all. But I won't lie to you. It's going to be dangerous. Probably the hardest thing we've ever done. She paused, letting her words sink in. But if we don't try, then who will? We've proven that humanity can adapt, that we can fight back. Now it's time to finish what we started. One by one, the others nodded. Emily spoke up, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. Whatever happens tomorrow, I'm proud to be part of this team, to stand with all of you. Laura smiled faintly, her heart swelling with gratitude. Then let's make sure we come back alive. The next morning, the Eclipse launched into orbit, carrying Laura and her team toward the alien command center. As they approached their destination, the enormity of the task ahead settled over them like a heavy blanket. But there was no turning back now. Humanity's future depended on their success. The alien command center loomed ahead, a massive structure floating in the cold emptiness of space. Its jagged edges and pulsating lights made it look like a living thing, breathing and waiting. Laura stood at the controls of the Eclipse, her eyes fixed on the looming fortress. She could feel the weight of what they were about to attempt pressing down on her chest, but she pushed the feeling aside. There was no room for doubt now. "This is it?" Jake said, his voice calm despite the tension in the air. "Once we're inside, there's no turning back." Laura nodded. "We knew that when we signed up for this. Let's focus on the mission." As they approached, Samantha monitored the ship's sensors, her fingers moving quickly across the console. "They've spotted us," she announced. "Shields are holding for now, but they're launching fighters." "Hold steady," Laura ordered, gripping the edge of her seat. "Jake, get us as close as you can without drawing too much attention." Jake maneuvered the Eclipse skillfully, weaving through the chaos of enemy ships firing bursts of energy. The shields flared with each impact, but the ship held together. Finally, they reached a docking bay on the underside of the command center, hidden from view by debris and shadows. It wasn't ideal, but it was their best chance. "All right," Laura said, standing up and checking her weapon. "Let's move fast. We don't know how long we'll have before they figure out where we are." The team disembarked quietly, stepping onto the alien vessel with weapons drawn. The air inside was cold and stale, filled with an eerie silence that sent shivers down their spines. The corridors twisted and turned like veins in a living organism, glowing faintly with pulsating light. Every step felt heavier than the last, as if the ship itself was alive and watching them. Emily led the way, clutching her tablet tightly. She had memorized the schematics of the command center based on data retrieved from previous missions. "The control room is this way," she whispered, pointing down a narrow hallway. "But we'll need to disable the security systems first." Daniel took point, scanning for threats as they moved forward. They encountered resistance almost immediately. Alien soldiers patrolling the halls, their insectoid forms clicking and clacking as they moved. Laura signaled for silence and the team ducked into cover. When the patrol passed, they sprang into action, taking down the guards swiftly and silently. "Good work," Laura said under her breath, motioning for them to keep moving. They reached the security hub, a small chamber filled with blinking consoles and organic circuitry. Samantha got to work, her hands flying across the controls as she hacked into the system. "I'm disabling the cameras and alarms," she said, her voice tense. "This should buy us some time." "How much?" Laura asked. "A few minutes tops," Samantha replied. "After that, they'll know we're here." "That's all we need," Emily said, already heading toward the next corridor. "Let's go." The journey to the control room was fraught with danger. They fought off waves of alien defenders, dodging traps and navigating collapsing sections of the ship. Each step brought them closer to their goal, but also deeper into enemy territory. By the time they reached the central chamber, they were battered and bruised, but determined. Inside, the room was dominated by a massive terminal embedded in the wall, its surface covered in glowing symbols and shifting patterns. Emily approached, it cautiously connecting her tablet to the system. "I need a few minutes to upload the failsafe program," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "It has to override their entire network." Laura nodded, signaling for the others to take defensive positions. "Do it fast. We won't last long once they realize what we're doing." Moments later, alarms blared throughout the command center. Red lights flashed violently, and the hum of machinery grew louder. Alien reinforcements poured into the chamber, firing bursts of energy that ricocheted off walls and equipment. Laura and Daniel fought fiercely, taking down wave after wave of enemies. Bullets whizzed past and explosions rocked the room, but they refused to give up. "We're almost done," Emily shouted, her fingers flying across the keyboard. "Just hold them off a little longer." Jake and Samantha joined the fray, providing cover fire as the battle raged on. Despite the overwhelming odds, the team held their ground, driven by the knowledge that failure wasn't an option. Finally, Emily let out a triumphant cry. "It's done! The failsafe is active!" Before anyone could celebrate, the ground beneath their feet began to shake violently. Warning klaxons blared, and the lights flickered erratically. "What's happening?" Laura demanded, keeping her weapon trained on the entrance. "The core is destabilizing," Emily replied, backing away from the terminal. "We need to get out of here, now!" The team sprinted toward the exit, dodging falling debris and enemy fire. Just as they reached the docking bay, the command center erupted in a blinding flash of light, obliterating everything around it. Jake piloted the Eclipse away from the destruction, his hands steady on the controls despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. Breathing heavily, Laura collapsed into her seat as the Eclipse sped back toward Earth. Behind them, the remains of the alien command center drifted apart, consumed by flames and debris. For the first time in weeks, the weight on Laura's shoulders lifted slightly. They had done it. They had activated the failsafe. When they returned to Earth, the effects of their actions were immediate. Reports poured in from affected areas, detailing the complete reversal of the bioweapons effects. Plants and animals that had been transformed began returning to their original forms, and the mutated organisms disappeared entirely. Scientists worked tirelessly to confirm the results using data provided by Emily to ensure the threat was truly neutralized. General Hayes called a final briefing, gathering Laura, Emily, and the rest of the team in the command center. The mood was celebratory, though Hayes remained cautious. "You did it," he said, addressing the group. "You've saved humanity." Laura shook her head. "We couldn't have done it without everyone who supported us. This victory belongs to all of us." Hayes nodded, a rare smile spreading across his face. "Agreed, but don't think this means we can let our guard down. The aliens may be gone for now, but there's no telling what other threats are out there. Emily stepped forward, her expression thoughtful. There's still so much we don't know about the universe or ourselves, but one thing is clear. Humanity isn't weak. We proved that today. President Rachel Monroe addressed the planet in a historic speech, standing before a podium adorned with the flag of the United Nations. Her presence was calm but resolute as she spoke to billions of viewers. Today marks a new chapter in human history, she declared. For too long we allowed fear to dictate our actions. Now we stand united, ready to face whatever challenges lie ahead. Let this be a lesson to anyone else out there. We are not victims, we are survivors, and we will never stop fighting for our future. Her words ignited a spark of hope across the globe. Cities erupted in celebration, with people pouring into the streets to cheer and embrace. Humanity, once fractured and divided, found unity in the face of adversity. The war against the aliens had changed them, not just as individuals, but as a species. They had discovered strength they didn't know they possessed, proving that even in the darkest moments, they could rise above. In the days that followed, life began to return to normal. The scars of the conflict remained, etched into both the landscape and the hearts of those who had fought. But alongside the pain came a sense of pride, a shared understanding that they had faced the impossible and emerged victorious. Laura sat alone on the balcony of a UNSDI facility, staring out at the horizon. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. She felt a strange mix of emotions, relief, exhaustion, and a lingering sense of unease. The war was over, but she knew it wouldn't be the last challenge humanity would face. "You okay?" Daniel asked, joining her on the balcony. Laura smiled faintly. "Yeah, just thinking." "About what?" "Everything," she admitted. "What comes next?" "Who we are now." Daniel nodded, leaning against the railing beside her. "We're stronger," he said simply. "Not just because we won, but because we didn't give up. That's something worth holding on to." Laura looked at him, gratitude swelling in her chest. "You're right. Whatever happens next, we'll face it together." As night fell, the stars appeared in the sky, twinkling like distant promises. Laura gazed up at them, her mind filled with questions about what lay beyond. Humanity had taken its first steps into the galactic arena, proving that they were capable of standing toe-to-toe with the most advanced civilizations. But this was only the beginning. Somewhere out there, other